everyone, my name is Taylor. I am a wedding photographer based in Seattle, Washington. Every single wedding is different, and the number one tool that I love to bring on wedding days is a customized timeline based on the photo needs of the couple. Their top priorities, where I need to be and when, how long I need for details and family photos, all of that. It can really kind of boggle your mind when you're trying to figure out what an actual wedding day looks like and how many hours of coverage you need when it comes to like photo video coverage. And so I always recommend that if a couple is trying to figure out all of this, don't feel like you need to know all the things. I always recommend ask your photographer, ask your videographer. Hopefully you have a wedding planner on your day. They can definitely help too. But regardless of a wedding planner or not, I always create this tool for myself because I get rid of all the details that a coordinator might need to think about, and I focus solely on the photo aspects. And so this just helps me keep track throughout the day, keeps us on time, it keeps it really seamless. If you are also a wedding photographer in the industry and you're trying to figure out, I don't have a lot of experience, I don't know how long I need for certain chunks of time throughout the day, hopefully this is also a great resource for you so that you can just kind of structure a timeline of your own, and as you go you will figure it out too and figure out what works best for you, because as artists we all need our own version of what works best and how our brain works, and maybe even just like this simple template that I'm about to make, you like to spruce it up a little bit, but for me I just usually have a blank slate. I type in the things that I need, I bold the things that if I look on my phone or the printed out piece of paper, I know exactly what I need to look at next and figuring out what comes next. So anyway, let's get to it. Typically when I talk to a couple, I ask them about their needs, their top priorities for their day, if they know what time their ceremony is going to start, obviously where it's going to be, if they're getting ready at a different location, if they even care about getting ready photos, if they want us there at the end of the night, all of the things. This helps me grasp, okay, so I feel like 8 hours of coverage is going to be perfect for the things that you need, or maybe they might need more, like 9 or 10 hours, and we talk about that. Or maybe they have a lower budget, or they really just want like ceremony and formal photos and maybe a little bit for the reception, but really 4 to 6 hours is going to be the ideal amount of coverage for their day. And so I always just like kind of take some notes so that I have an idea of what their priorities are. So for this instance, my hypothetical couple, their name is Ashley and Tom. And so I'm going to write down Ashley and Tom wedding day. And they are going to get married on Sunday, August 1st of 2021. And their wedding venue is Woodinville Lavender, but they actually want to get ready closer to downtown in like downtown Bellevue. So getting ready is going to be at the Westin in Bellevue. And so I usually kind of talk a little bit about, I try to figure out how many people are in their bridal party. So let's say they have 4 bridesmaids and 4 groomsmen, and maybe they do want to do a first look. And so I always recommend first looks. We have another video on our YouTube channel that talks all about first looks and why we love them so much. So if you want to watch that, go ahead and after this video you can go watch that. But we never ever pressure a couple into doing a first look if they don't want to. A majority of my couples opt for a first look because it is just that special intimate moment that they have before like the crazy of the rest of the wedding day, when they're bombarded by in like the best way possible of all of their guests on their day. And so this is just a moment where they have come from getting ready and like all that anticipation, all of that build up, and then they see each other and you can just breathe and you can just giggle, talk about your morning so far, check each other out a little bit, make out a little bit, like whatever you want to do. And then we invite the bridal party into that space. We take bridal party formal photos, move into the ceremony, and then that's when you can really celebrate the guests a little bit more. Maybe some of your nerves settled leading up to the ceremony. There's so many good good reasons why you would have a first look. But it's not for everyone, so we never pressure it. So let's just say that this couple wants it, and then I can give an example of like maybe they didn't want to opt for a first look. They wanted to wait for the ceremony. Okay, so that's basically where I start. The rest of it, I always tell my couples, is completely customizable to their day. We tweak things as needed leading up to the wedding day. And so it's really hard to grasp everything that you want right now and how much time you need, and if you want a first look, and if you're gonna add video and all this stuff. Like, to know all of the details over a year in advance is a lot of pressure. And so with this, it just gives a really good idea of like what an 8-hour timeline looks like. And then we can just tweak from there. If you want to add on an hour, maybe we come a little earlier, we stay later, everything like that. And so it's never locked in stone until, you know, sometimes we change it like day of, but it's never locked in stone until everyone feels good about it. Okay, so let's say we have 8 hours of coverage. The ceremony start time is at 5 p.m. And maybe they don't have a formal exit, or they don't really care if we're going to stay for the formal grand exit of like sparklers or florals, bubbles, something like that. So we're not going to worry about that just yet. Their main priority is just like documenting the day. Okay, so for 8 hours of coverage, this is kind of how I start with the blank slate. So I put in the things that I know. 5 p.m. ceremony start time. Generally, ceremonies last for about 30 minutes. That's give or take, but that gives us a lot of wiggle room. I'm all about adding in wiggle room as needed. Just in case we start a little bit later, in case something runs over a little bit, or just to allow that extra time of all of those hugs and tears and laughter with maybe their bridal party and family members before stepping into the rest of the formal photos. Like, just to give them that extra 5-10 minutes is like so great, so that no one feels rushed. So even if a ceremony is 15 minutes, I just calculate for 30. So the ceremony ends. So that means guests are going to start to arrive at 4. So then you hide the couple. So as you can see, with a timeline, I do not start at the beginning or the end. I start at the meat of the day, which is the ceremony, and if we know that time yet. Sometimes if we don't know the time, we have a lot more flexibility, and then with that, I base it on what time sunset is. And for this, since we do know the ceremony start time, then I am going to work forward from the ceremony to make sure we get all of those big events. And then I work backwards to figure out how long we have for, let's say, getting ready photos, bridal party, when maybe their first look should start. And so there's no like, sometimes you gotta jump around a little bit, but it all works out in the end. So ceremony ends at 5:30. So with that, you know, they'll have a couple extra minutes to hang out with their people and give hugs. So let's look at what time sunset is. So I'm going to grab the address to where these So I'm going to grab the address of where the ceremony and reception is going to take place. And let's go to maps. Awesome. So we got the address. It's over in Redmond. And then let's look up the sunset time. Sunset, Redmond, Washington on August 1st, 2021. So 8:42 p.m. Let's just say 8:40, just in case we lose it a little sooner. Sunset. Perfect. And so with that, we know that if the ceremony is starting at 5 and the sunset doesn't start for a few hours after that, all of the golden hour lit photos that we're going to do is going to happen during the reception. So we'll take all of the formal photos before, get those done, all the family photos, bridal party, and even the wedding couple as well. Obviously will happen before sunset, but then we'll just sneak them back out again at sunset to make sure we get those golden hour lit photos. So I look at what time sunset is, put that in, and then we just keep structuring from there. And so if family photos are going to start immediately after the ceremony, we give them time for hugs, and then maybe we have them sign the marriage license. So then at 5:45, we start family photos. I have a whole other template that I send couples all about family photos, and so that way we plan out all of the variations of family photos that we want for that day. And so I always encourage, share this photo with this template with your family members, with primarily your parents, so that we don't have any of those last minute, mom wants a photo with all of her sisters and all your cousins and like that big group, and it's like, well, maybe we don't have time for that right now, but hey, we'll encourage, we can do that during the reception. And so if there's any big photos that we do want to prioritize, maybe the wedding couple does want a big family photo with all the aunts and uncles and all the cousins and, you know, great big family, we write that down too. And so that way we know that we're prioritizing that during this chunk of time of family photos. And so after having that template, I know I can look at it and I know how long that's going to take me. Typically about 20 minutes to 45 if it's a really long list, but 20 minutes I'm usually pretty good. Once you have that list, you just go through it really quick. So let's say that takes, we're gonna carve out 30 minutes. So let's say 6:15 is when we can do Ashley and Tom's formal photos. And then let's do, just for 15 minutes, grand entrance at 6:30. Let's say that they want to go from the grand entrance straight into their first dance. And then from there, we will do some speeches. So let's give us at 6:45. Maybe they do a thank you speech. Maybe the parents step up and have a speech. I usually ask how many speakers they'll have. Normally it's about 3 or 4. So I give us about 15 minutes for that time block. And then hey, if it runs over, that's why we create buffers throughout the rest of the night. So from speeches, we just start dinner at 7. This is when, as photo and video, if we're working an 8-hour day, we take a break for 30 minutes. And so this just helps us regroup. We eat food at the same time as the wedding couple, and then that allows us to be ready when they are to either start taking like table shot photos. If they start going around mingling, we're ready for candids. It ensures that they actually have time to eat too, because if we're not up taking photos, then guests, if they're approaching them, they're not wanting a photo too. So it just gives everybody like a nice little break. Just enjoy the food that you're paying for, you know what I mean? So let's say photo. So then at 7:30, either we could do like the formal dancing, or let's just say we're gonna cut the cake. So we'll do cake cutting. And from there, we will do the more formal dances if they opt to do like a father-daughter, mother-son, any of those, maybe like a money dance, something like that. So we will do, I mean, cake cutting doesn't take very long, so formal dances. And then we'll go straight into open dancing from there. And so I typically ask the couple to run this by the DJ who's in charge of the reception for the night and the timing of when all of that happens. And so if we are on like a tight schedule, it really helps if we, I mean, it always helps if you work together as a team, but if we are trying to jam all of the big events within a certain amount of time, making sure we're all on the same page about that, because DJs obviously have their flow and their routine too, and then if they are like, that's too quick of a timeline, we're gonna have like 4 extra hours of open dancing, we should spread this out more, then they can recommend, you know, I do think we need to spread this out, let's add photo video for an extra hour. That will help it like flow really nicely and feel really smooth and seamless for your guests. And then if not, if you don't have that chat with the DJ, then like we can have that discussion too, because when you're looking at this, you can definitely tell like, oh, that seems, if we have the event space until midnight, what are we going to do for all that time, or you know, whatever. Again, it's all customizable, it's all based on personal preference, but let's just say for the sake of this that open dancing is going to start at 7:45, and so now we're within an hour of sunset, so we know that the couple can enjoy open dancing for at least 30 minutes, and then let's say at like 8:15, sneak out Ashley and Tom for sunset portraits, and that gives us 30 whole minutes of sunset. While everybody else is dancing, we just sneak them out. Sometimes, depending on the sunset time, we would take them at dinner. So instead of cake cutting, for instance, we would, during dinner, sneak them out for sunset photos, and then right when we come back in with communication with like the coordinator and the DJ, they know that we're going to be back at like, you know, let's say if we snuck them out at 7:30, let's say we come back at 7:45 or 8 o'clock, then we come back and we can start the other formal dances, the cake cutting, all of that. And so for this instance, it actually works out that sunset's at 8:40, gives us plenty of time. So let's say sunset. So Ashley and Tom's back at the reception by 8:45. They're ready for more open dancing. We're there just capturing all of the candid moments throughout that. Okay, so now is the time that we work backwards, because we're about, so if we were to structure it this way, we're leaving at 9 p.m., which means that we are going to get there at, what would that be, 1 o'clock? Okay, so with this, it has us arrive at 1 o'clock, leaving at 9 p.m. But let's say, because we do have such a big gap before the ceremony, and since the venue itself is a lavender farm, meaning that we are going to be under that bright summer sunshine for a large majority of the day, if we do all of these formal photos before the ceremony. So I don't think we need to get there that early, and also sometimes the couple wants us there for more than 15 minutes of open dancing, which for photo, after about 15 minutes, it all kind of starts to look the same. But if the vibe on the dance floor is really strong, then definitely being able to stay for longer. Or if the couple opts to do like a bouquet and garter toss, if you do have the money dance, like all of that takes more time. And so us being there for longer during the reception allows us that time. So I'm going to just say that maybe we leave at 10, and that puts us to arrive at 2. But remember, we are doing the getting ready at a different location. So this is when it gets a little tricky, because now you're traveling from one venue to the other. So it's the Westin in Bellevue, and so we're gonna get that, those directions. Perfect. We'll arrive at the Westin. So we're 18 minutes away, so that means I'm going to give us 30 minutes to travel. Because that means that we are leaving the hotel room, getting to our cars, driving to the new location, parking, and then walking on to the venue. So sometimes we got to stagger that. So if we leave at 2:30, leave for Lavender, and that means we arrive there at 3 p.m. Actually, so let's say, so photo video is going to leave for Woodinville Lavender at 2:30 because we want a head start. So maybe okay, so if we leave at 2:30 and we try to make sure that Ashley's leaving at the same time as us with the bridesmaids, but we will have Tom and his groomsmen leave a little bit earlier. They're gonna head out at 2:20. Tom, leave for. That way, by the time they get there and we put the bridal party in charge of communicating with each other to make sure that they don't see each other just yet, because we are going to do the first look at the venue instead of at the hotel. The hotel will just be for getting ready. And so if we arrive there at 2 o'clock sharp, that means typically if you have a second shooter, we split ways. And so one group would be like with Ashley and her bridesmaids, and then one group would be with Tom and his groomsmen. With Nathan and I, we do a lot of wedding solo shooting, and so this is definitely a time where we just need to stagger it accordingly so that we do have enough time. With this, I recommend that Tom and his groomsmen will be fully ready so that when we walk into the room at 2 p.m., photo, video, arrive, getting ready with Tom. I make a note that Tom and groomsmen should be fully ready by the time we arrive, because it takes 5 minutes of getting ready photos for the groom and groomsmen. Typically, we just set them up with really good light. We have them take off their jackets, put them back on, have someone straighten a tie, take off a shoe, put it back on, tie it. Super simple. Maybe pin some boutonnieres, maybe a couple cheersing photos, maybe a couple gatherings. So within 10 minutes, we're done. So then at 2:10, okay. Okay, so with the bridesmaids, I always recommend, if we're not doing a ton of getting ready time, again, if we shifted this up an hour, we would definitely have so much time of like having the bridesmaids get dressed, and we're there for the tail end of hair and makeup. But if we do want to stay for a longer time in the reception, then maybe the getting ready process is a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more condensed. And so when we get there, basically is the time that Ashley would get into her dress. So hair and makeup's already done, the bridesmaids are already ready, maybe they're packed and already ready to go and leave. But we're just there to say our highs and get some quick details, a few candids, maybe some last minute touches of hairspray, new lipstick, stuff like that. And then we get Ashley into her dress, and that gives us 15 minutes before we're leaving the venue. Again, this might feel a little rushed for some couples, and obviously if they are prioritizing more of the getting ready photos, then either we come early and then that means we leave a little bit earlier than this 10 o'clock time frame, or we add on an extra hour and that means we can arrive an extra hour before, so that would give us a lot more time for detail photos. If we are taking ring shots and hanging the dress somewhere and doing all of that, a lot more candids, maybe a photo with her and her girls in their robes, things like that. Again, based on priorities, different for every wedding. So for this one, it's going to be short, sweet, and condensed, because the priority is based on the ceremony and the portraits and the time spent at the venue. Also, if you are getting ready at a venue that has a bridal suite and that's where you're getting ready, you could do your hair and makeup off-site if that's something that needs to happen. Come to the venue, and then once you get there, that's when you get into your dress. And so sometimes it's a little more fluid and streamlined that way if we wanted to cut out that 30 minutes of drive time, and that would give us so much more time for more candids and maybe a robe shot, everything like that. So I kind of team up with a couple and figure out what will feel best, what won't make them feel as rushed on a wedding day, and then we go from there. But if this is the priority, they just want like a couple quick, really good like photo, video documentation of the getting ready, but that's not really their priority, then great. Short and sweet works for us because we still come in calm, cool, and collected. So if we are arriving at Woodinville Lavender, I make sure I put the address every time, even if I go to the venue a lot. And even if it's pinned on my Google Maps, I make sure I have the address written down. So right when Ashley and the bridesmaids arrive, we are ready for our first look. Okay, so now that Ashley and her bridesmaids, as well as Tom and his groomsmen, who are put away in a different room, all at the ceremony and reception venue, we are ready for our first look. And so right when they get there, they get hid away, and then we go grab Tom. And we are doing the first look at, let's say, 3:10. And so that is their private moment where I don't let the bridal party watch, I don't let family watch. We find a quiet space, hopefully, that's also pretty, hopefully, to do their first look. And then that can be 5 minutes, it can be 20 minutes. This is a conversation that I have with a couple to see how long they want this time frame. But really it's just the time for them to just connect. And so let's say they want about like 15 minutes. So 3:25. We're gonna start the bridal party photos. And that generally takes about 30 minutes. So at 4 p.m., it would be time where either we could do some family photos because we don't have guests arriving till 4:30, or we go somewhere else and we take more photos for just the couple. And so that is what I'm gonna opt to do for this, since we already have our family photos carved out for later. So 4:30, so for about 30 minutes, we'll do that a little bit sooner. So that way they can get a refreshment, you know, we don't need a ton of time for that point, especially because it's summer in the Pacific Northwest on a lavender farm. It's gonna be really hot, so I don't want them sunburnt before the ceremony. I don't want them dehydrated. They should be able to have a snack. They should be able to relax without a camera in their face, because at the time that guests begin to arrive is when we also need to take our detail photos, any B-roll that we need for videography purposes, and then also setting up the tripods for the ceremony, and just getting our gear set, maybe eat a Cliff Bar and have some water ourselves, you know. So at 4:20, photo video setup for ceremony. So at this point, I'm realizing, okay, we don't have time to get the reception spot detail photos. Typically, we will do that right when we set up for the ceremony if it's ready yet, but more times, typically we do that when we set up for the ceremony. We get the details for the reception as well, and like the guest book table and all of that, but sometimes it's not ready yet, and so I definitely try to carve out time where we can make sure that we get that. So let's see, where can I fit this in? So maybe this extra 15 minutes with the hugs and the marriage license, we don't really need 15 minutes, so it's more like 5, maybe 10. But let's shoot for 5 because I can do details quickly. So if we start family photos, then that means their photos 30 minutes later. They'll have another break. Maybe Ashley needs to bustle her dress, so that will give her time to do that. If we, at 6:15, so 10 minutes for some portraits, because we also know we're going to sneak them out at sunset. So we don't need huge chunks of time. It's just little intimate moments, just little moments together. Photo, video, reception, details. And that's when everyone will know, okay, Ashley's dress also needs to be bustled. So perfect, there's that. So I get rid of my notes that I have at the bottom, and then I start prioritizing the things that I need when I'm quickly glancing at the timeline of what are the big events that I'm preparing for, whether we are trying to catch ourselves up on the timeline or we have extra buffer and wiggle room here and there. I just start formatting so that I'm quickly able to see what the next big thing is. And this is really personal preference. This is based on how your brain works, basically. And so for me, I kind of know what's next. It's just knowing where the guests are going to be at all time, basically. And also when we get to eat food. Awesome. Perfect. So that is it. That is based on 8 hours of coverage with the first look, with a venue change in the middle of the day. With photo video coverage of solo shooting. So if you can't divide up your time between a second shooter and you physically have to be the one documenting the photo and video coverage, then I know where Nathan and I are going to be throughout the entire day. Typically we stay together with this so that way we don't have to redo any moments. If we do have a second shooter, obviously I would put that during family photos is when second shooters will go do the reception details, and then that way during this time at 6:15 is just to bustle Ashley's dress, and at that point I will just go get additional reception footage. But guests will probably be sitting at that time, so they can come in a little bit earlier. Another thing would be if they're not doing a first look, we could do bridal parties separately, where we would start with the bridesmaids And then at 3:25, Tom. And groomsmen photos, keeping those individual, and then that way after the ceremony, we would do the full bridal party, everybody all together. Another thing would be if they are getting ready at the Woodinville Lavender farm, then we don't need these details, and we would get an extra hour of coverage at the same location. So that would mean that we are arriving at Woodinville Lavender. I would put this here. I would still make sure that everybody is fully ready, and possibly still go see Tom and his groomsmen just to make sure that we have those set. And then if anything is happening where Ashley's hair and makeup is pushed back, or maybe they just need a couple more moments to breathe, like we're not jumping in there right at 2, like we'll get there. We'll get to her. Because then once we're with her, we help guide the time frame of when she gets into her dress, and then when we would go into the first look, or when we would start like the bridal party photos. So let's see, we would still do that at 2. And then since we do have more time because we don't have to leave, maybe we're there with him for 30 minutes. And then maybe we're there with him for 15 minutes. We head over to Ashley. Again, if we had a second shooter, we would send the second shooters with Tom and his guys, and then we would be with Ashley right at 2 as well. So then let's get her into her dress. Maybe she wants Ashley and bridesmaids and robes. And then at 2:25, bridesmaids will get dressed. 10 minutes later, Ashley will get into her dress. And then let's say we would either start our first look earlier, or if we're not doing the first look, then we would start the bridal party photos a little bit sooner. So if we do that, then we do have a few extra moments for detail photos. I push back when bridesmaids should get dressed, and then Ashley will get into her dress, and then give us about 15 minutes for that. Then we'll start her with her bridesmaids, move through to Tom and his groomsmen, make sure that they're both tucked away, leaving for the ceremony. And then with that, if we want to get even crazier, we could do separate family photos as well. So then that way, after the ceremony, we do just the big groups all together. And so that would save us some time, so that it's not cutting into our reception time frame. All right, and so this is a template based on if the couple is getting ready at the same venue as their ceremony and reception is taking place, and if they opted to not do a first look. Just to give you an idea of how it can look a little different. And yeah, again, like I always say, this is a template. This is not based on what you should do for your wedding day. This is just an idea to start to wrap your head around what do you want to prioritize. Do you want more getting ready photos? This is how we can do that. Maybe we find a hotel that's closer to the venue, so it's more of a 15-minute trek to the venue than a 30-minute one. Maybe we add on an extra hour of coverage so that drive time really doesn't take a hit on our wedding day. Maybe we do opt for a first look so that you do have an extra 30 minutes of portraits before your ceremony, and that just adds more variety to your ending gallery. And then maybe you're doing a grand exit at 11 p.m. and so you need us to stay for an extra hour of coverage because you would like documentation of that. And so I hope that all of this makes sense. In my brain, I've been doing this for so many years and for so many weddings that this is just how I sit down and I structure it, and I just move things as needed. And I hope that showing some of my process will help you grasp what would be best for your wedding day too. And so if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm an open book about this kind of stuff. I don't think that there's like a one-size-fits-all template because every wedding day is so unique. And I think that that's how it should be. And so even though this is based on like an average 8-hour coverage day that I do for most of my couples, most weddings are structured in this way. There are little moments that maybe Ashley wants to do a first look with her dad. And so we need to make sure that we figure out a time during the getting ready photos, possibly before her first look with Tom, that we make sure that she has that moment with her dad. Things like that. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this is a great resource that you can start using for your wedding day or in talks with your wedding photographer. If you're a photographer, hopefully this will help you understand more of how a wedding day is structured, and you start thinking about how much time you might want for family photos, and hopefully it gives you some good ideas in that aspect. But so this is just my template that I use on a wedding day. I don't think that every wedding is like a one-size-fits-all. I think that everything should be able to be customized to what you want and what you prioritize on your day. And so I hope that this resource was helpful. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, bye.